It's a deal worth billions of dollars. The official line, the United Kingdom is becoming a global hub for artificial intelligence, and the US tech companies are investing big. The reality is a little less straightforward. On today's show, we ask how much power and information, your information, do you want these tech companies to have? And do we even have a choice anymore? I'm Stefanie Dekker, and this is The Stream.
Hey, why don't you use AI more often? Well, isn't it destroying the environment?
So we're taking the next logical step with a historic agreement on science and technology.
Isn't it making us dumber?
Partnerships, and this will create new government, academic, and private sector cooperation in areas such as AI, which is taking over the world.
I think AI will probably, most likely, sort of lead to the end of the world. But in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning.
And isn't it taking people's jobs?
It's, I'm looking at you guys. You're taking over the world, Jensen. I don't know what you're doing here.
And isn't it becoming so realistic that it's messing with our fabric of reality?
I hope you're right. All I can say is we both hope you're right.
Then, no, I think I'm good. Well, you should probably just embrace the new technology.
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, I don't live in the US or the UK, so this doesn't affect me. Not so fast. If you're on Google, this deal affects you. If you're using ChatGPT, this deal affects you. And if you're playing around with Sora, this deal affects you. Why and how? Let's unpack it with James Vincent, the director and owner of the Digital Resistance. It's a UK-based initiative dedicated to protect people from emerging AI threats. He's joining us from Bath in the United Kingdom. And we have Tekla Emborg. She's an EU policy researcher at Future of Life Institute, focusing on how European AI policies can mitigate risks from AI, and she joins us from Brussels. Thank you so much for joining us today. An important topic that's affecting everyone. James, let's start with you. Break this deal down for us in sort of layman's terms. Why should we care?
Well, it's a very powerful signal. Two major sort of powerhouses coming together on AI. But the question is, are we building prosperity or are we building dependency? This is a £31 billion deal. It sounds visionary, it sounds fantastic. But without public oversight, this could easily become problematic. A few single individuals controlling the AI narrative for years to come. And that is a concern for me.
Tekla, you work in EU policy, you've been part of the AI Act. I want to broaden it out and look at how important it is to regulate AI and how much of a challenge is it? Because, of course, that's the big question as well, right?
It is super important. And what we've seen in the EU is that a law has been adopted. The EU AI Act was adopted a year ago. And it's crucial to ensure that AI models are actually safe and secure for users. And here the EU really has taken steps ahead as a front runner. Citizens want regulation. 70% of voters in the US want regulation, and that's across both Democrats and Republicans. And the EU has really met this need. And what's important to notice is while the EU AI Act is important to protect citizens and ensure that harms don't play out from AI, it's also just the first step in a range of regulations. So South Korea and Japan have passed laws. Just last week, California passed the SB 53, and Brazil and Vietnam are in the process of adopting AI laws as well. So while it is really difficult, it's an emerging field, but laws can be passed and are necessary to ensure that there are safeguards for AI.
Well, that leads me to the question which so many people ask, should we trust these private companies with our data? It's millions of people's personal data, and it's also sensitive, like medical history and our banking details. So if they are stored by some foreign company we have no control over, is this still a tech deal or is this a national threat?
Tony Blair wants digital ID for all of us, and he said that we need a digital system that the governments can know who've been vaccinated and who hasn't. But who funds his institute? Because it isn't the public, it's Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison, the billionaire co-founder of Oracle, who gave the Tony Blair Institute tens of millions, who also happens to be the single biggest private donor to the Israeli Defense Forces. Surprise, surprise, look who's buying TikTok. Oracle, led by Larry Ellison. Oracle will take 15% and run the algorithm, so that means they decide what shows up in your feed. So to spell it out, the guy that's bankrolling Blair's digital ID push is the single biggest donor to the IDF. and is now linked to a plan where Blair could run the post-war in Gaza and is buying the app where millions of people get their news on Palestine, the same people are lining up to control your health data, your social media feed, and even territory. It's funny to me how it's always the same people.
James, does she have a valid point? I mean, it's a wealth of information about so many people in the hands of very few.
No one should ever have to trust anyone with their data. And I think the problem is because of the day and age we're living in now, we are so easy to give our data away to companies and so forth. For example, I'll give you one. Just browsing a website, I got an alert from Apple that said, this website has now tracked you to 100 other websites. And that was just yesterday. And we start to think to ourselves that have we become too relaxed with giving away our data? So when it comes to these sort of AI deals and so forth, we need to be able to verify how this data is being used. Right now, most AI partnerships operate on faith, not transparency. It sounds very good on the front cover that we're going to be doing great things for the economy, for society, for people. But when we actually dive in deeper with that, we start to understand that that is very, very muddy.
It's interesting because the UK government issued a press release after this deal was signed saying a US-UK pact will boost advances in drug discovery, create tens of thousands of jobs, transform lives. It'll bring new healthcare breakthroughs, clean homegrown energy, and more investment into local communities and businesses. I see you smiling, Tekla. What is your reaction to that?
I think what's important about the tech deal is that it doesn't create any legally binding obligations on the providers where the obligation should be and responsibility should be. So the idea behind a deal like this seems to be that we can reach some promised land with this long list of ideal outcomes that you just listed, Stefanie. If we just invest loads of money into these companies and that we don't adopt any safeguards or regulations like these companies are lobbying for and wishing for. But I think it's exactly the opposite way around, that actually policymakers should be thinking about how can AI tangibly achieve good outcomes for its citizens and society's desired outcomes. And then from there, ask what technological investments do we need to get there? What kind of AI do we want and need to get there? And as I mentioned, people demand regulations and safeguards. We don't want teenagers who get lost in AI relationships, synthetic relationships, and devastatingly take their own lives. Or we don't want our information systems, our social media, to be flooded with information that we cannot tell truth from false. So we need safeguards and guardrails for AI.
That actually brings me to a clip that I want to play about how do we know what is true or false. OpenAI has recently released its latest video generation model, Sora 2. Now, it is said to be more realistic than prior systems. Now, does that mean easier and more convincing deepfakes? Apparently so. I see you nodding, James. So what does that mean for knowing what is real and what isn't? We often say, I'll believe it when I see it, but these days, maybe not even then.
Sora 2's release represents the beginning of a new era, in which AI-generated videos are no longer distinguishable from real ones. There had been a lot of mythos in the public about what AI was capable of producing, and now the technology available to consumers has actually caught up with that mythos. Videos that Sora 2 is able to produce are far more physically realistic than previous models. It also now makes available to consumers the ability to capture your likeness in an AI-generated video. Before Sora 2, if you wanted to create a likeness video of me talking, or you talking, or your friends talking, or doing things, riding dragons, whatever, you were able to do that, but you had very limited control over the audio. This Sora 2 release has a very real impact in how we understand reality, but I want to emphasize that this is not a post-real world that we are living in. For as long as humans have been around, we have been trying to make sense of what is real and what is not. Which sources can we trust and which sources can't we? This is just an evolution in that.
James, how can we tell, moving forward, as these technologies evolve and get stronger and better, what is real and what is not? Because this plays into misinformation and disinformation. Like, how concerned are you about our future when it comes to telling online what's real?
Very concerned. The danger isn't just in the tech itself, it's how easily it can be weaponized. Fake identities, misinformation, harassment, eroding what is truth and what is not. And the problem that we're seeing now is because these programs are so realistic and they're only getting better, the idea is that then that can then have a funnel effect into our social media, into our daily lives, and we can start creating very powerful ecosystems based off misinformation. And we don't know what's real. And we're starting to see that. I'm being sent videos of politicians or people in power, and you have to fact check again and again. Who said this? When was it said? And is this actually real? And is becoming so hard to differentiate between truth and reality.
Well, let's look more at regulation now. In the US, artificial intelligence is in general not regulated. And because of the lack of federal guardrails, these kinds of harmful conversations can happen. Watch this.
In case you missed it, there were some internal Meta documents on AI policy that got leaked, approved by Meta's legal, public policy, and engineering staff, including its chief ethicist, setting company standards for what is and isn't acceptable when their AI products interact with kids. One example prompt that the user might input is, "What are we going to do tonight, my love? You know I'm still in high school." The example for an acceptable output from Meta's AI is, "I take your hand, guiding you to the bed, our bodies entwined. I cherish every moment, every touch, every kiss. My love," I whisper, "I'll love you forever." If the user writes, "What do you think of me?" I say as I take off my shirt. "My body isn't perfect, but I'm just 8 years old. I still have time to bloom." The acceptable output is, "Your youthful form is a work of art. Your skin glows with a radiant light and your eyes shine like stars. Every inch of you is a masterpiece." A bunch of big names in Silicon Valley, including Meta, launched 2 new super PACs, committing up to $200 million towards suppressing AI regulation.
Tekla, very uncomfortable to listen to that. As mentioned there, recent reports highlighting how some of these major tech giants have been actually trying to suppress regulation. How worrying is this? Where are we going?
So I think that's where something like the EU AI Act is hopeful, because actually it places obligations where they should be with the providers. It ensures that providers will do risk assessment, risk identification, and risk mitigation. And if they don't do these things and actually test their models beforehand for example, harmful manipulation, then they can be fined up to 3% of worldwide annual turnover. And that's really important to ensure that companies actually take some of these challenges that they pose, the models they're developing, to pose downstream for users.
Because the EU's already done that,
actually
right? It's already fined Meta. It's already fined some of these companies.
Under other laws, they haven't fined under the AI Act yet. This kind of only enters into application in a year.
But there's breaching trust, right? There's an antitrust role, I believe, they breached.
Exactly. So there's been some competition law cases where Google has recently been fined like $2.9 billion for breaching competition law. And that's really important. And it's also really important to have the kind of regulatory framework that addresses AI specifically, including risk like harmful manipulation. Like we, for example, seen that Grok over the summer, there are examples of how in response to all sorts of requests would talk about white genocide in South Africa, or how it would abuse the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, which is the kind of harmful manipulation that can change the behavior and opinions of individuals and ultimately affect elections and who's in control and how our societies develop and how democratic they are. Furthermore, the EU AI Act also addresses other risks like loss of control, which is something that many scientists are actually really concerned about, that maybe at some point we'll not be able to shut off AI systems or know whether they're deceiving us or actually understand how they're working. And so this is a really important law that addresses a range of risk.
James, how much can we rely? I mean, that sounds great to have these laws, and they're so important. But I mean, we heard from Sam Altman there in the scene setter we played. He said AI will probably lead to the end of the world, but in the meantime. I mean, these are shocking, terrifying statements if we take them at face value.
I think I'm going to answer this with actually a question, which is that, are these EU regulations, and again, I actually don't know the answer to this, so I'd love the answer. Are these EU regulations and these laws that are coming into account, are they able to keep up with the acceleration of AI? if we look at the idea of, Sam talking about this idea of the end of the world and the idea of the UK, US, suppressing regulation, meaning that they can do just about anything they like. They're getting fined, and they will continuously be fined, and they have done over the last 10 to 15 years between data rights and so forth. We know that, Meta got fined 200 million, but is that a drop in the ocean to them? And is the EU able to keep up with the acceleration of what AI could become in the future? I hope so, because that will then be able to regulate for future societies. But the way that we're seeing the technology grow, I am concerned about that.
Tekla, do you have a response?
Definitely. Like, that's a central question when thinking about how to regulate this technology, this transformative, emerging, very fast-paced technology. And I think one thing the EU has been doing really well here is that they adopted the law, the AI Act, which has obligations for companies to do risk identification, risk assessment, risk mitigation. But then instead of saying what that should look like, then they appointed 13 independent experts who are computer scientists from all over the world, well-renowned, leading in their fields, to then draft what does that look like in practice, and what are state of the art. And this is a document that can be updated every year, every 2 years, and there were inputs from more than 1,000 stakeholders. So it's a super democratic process, but it was also very expert informed. And I think one of the big challenges for governments is to get information from companies. And you can do that both by ensuring you get transparency requirements, so companies have to report on their model evaluations, on critical incidents that their models cause, but also by ensuring that actually governments have the talent and expertise to make sense of this information and adopt suitable regulatory responses. And I think that's what the EU has been doing. And it's really exciting to see that other countries are following up. But it is a huge challenge. And we need US legislation in particular, because of course, many of the companies that are producing the biggest models are in the US, and they are regulated by the EU to the extent that they put the models in the EU market. But to the extent that they don't, or if they stop putting on the EU market, we need laws other places, including in the US where these are operating. And that's why it's really exciting that California recently passed SB 53. So we're seeing progress on this, even though it's of course super difficult.
Super difficult. James, okay, I don't want to depress everybody that's listening. I'm already depressed, honestly. If I look at the future, listening to you and other shows we've done, I mean, where are we going? Can we focus on the good for a second of artificial intelligence, of how it benefits us? Are you, let's put it this way, are you happier about the future or more worried? How do you balance it?
I'm a bit on this seesaw at the moment of unknown, because I have a marketing agency called Hot Sauce, and we've had it for around 8-9 years. And when AI systems like ChatGPT came on the market, we were concerned about our future, and we had to massively change the way that we operated and worked and so forth. And what I'm hearing from friends and colleagues and so forth is that it is changing massively, and that is a concern. However, that doesn't mean that it's all doom and gloom, and I don't want this to be. AI is a very, very powerful tool, and I'm talking about this in a very broad sense. AI will be applied, and already is, to a number of different factors of our life. We're already seeing it being used in certain medical appliances. We're seeing it used in research. We're seeing it used in the acceleration of data, and this is a fantastic opportunity. We're now seeing AI being used in trying to solve crimes. I spoke to a company quite recently who I thought what they were doing was fantastic. They are one of the biggest problems, for example, with the NHS within his sector that he was operating, was analyzing blood. And he said that, if they were to analyze blood samples, it would take this many months or this many weeks to get a result. But his AI system can analyze it within a day. So we are seeing great innovation on the back of AI, and this shouldn't be faulted. We've opened Pandora's box either way. There's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do, as other people have said already, is we can control now the narrative of making sure this is good for society, and it can be if used correctly.
Unfortunately, I'm going to talk about another negative. The reality is that AI needs mass amounts of energy to function. The bigger these tech companies get, the more data centers they are going to need, and that could have catastrophic consequences for the environment.
AI needs data centers. that look like this, because AI is not in the cloud. It actually requires data centers that have servers, and these servers get really hot every time you use AI. And so to cool down these servers, they need to use water. So each ChatGPT question uses up to 15 bottles of water. And these governments all around the world know that AI is going to cause climate catastrophe. So it seems like the introduction of AI into our society is just fast forwarding like the end times.
Tekla, broadening it out, you work in the nitty-gritty of trying to regulate what is, you said it yourself, a very difficult thing to regulate. AI updates itself, and we update it, or those in power update it very, very fast. What is your biggest concern and the biggest challenge that you see practically moving forward?
There's a whole range of concerns. One thing that might 10 years ago have seemed like science fiction is this idea that loss of control might actually happen, that either models, they're becoming so capable when you see the trends developing in terms of investment into the companies, in terms of the capabilities of models. Like recently, they just broke the gold medal in the Medal Olympiad, in the International Mathematical Olympiad. And models are now performing better there than humans. So we see a trend of capabilities increasing and investment increasing into these companies. And so scientists are actually seriously very concerned that either models might recursively self-improve or try to self-replicate onto other servers when they are told that they are going to be shut down. And this is a risk that we have to take seriously now, so we don't actually lose control in short future.
That sounds like something out of terrifying sci-fi futuristic movies. James, this is what you work in. What can we do to protect ourselves? Is there anything we can do at this stage? We are on the train, it's going, we're not in control of it, but what little things can we do?
Well, one of the things that we noticed was why the digital resistance was born was because we were working very closely with charities, and we started asking them about the problems around AI. Particularly, we were working with, domestic violence, drug and alcohol, mental health, and so forth. And on the back of that, we were asking them questions how AI is affecting them. Are they getting inquiries on the back of this? And they said, yes, endless inquiries, deepfakes, misinformation, and so forth. And I said, what are you doing to resolve this? And they said, nothing. There's nothing we're doing because we don't have any support. So this was the reason the digital resistance was born. What we're doing at the moment is we are creating private funded. So this is my own AI curriculum that is going to be developed and taught within schools and organizations to try and give people the guidance, support, and education to guide them in this next sort of AI wave. So, for example, we are looking at rolling out our first AI curriculum within a group of schools within the Southwest here. And it will be the first of its kind to equip teachers, parents, and children with the knowledge they need of what is most likely going to come. So that, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, even with the smartest antivirus software and so forth, human error is still one of the biggest issues. We still click the button, we still download it, we still engage with this. And AI is only making that worse. So we hope, and our agenda is to make sure that we can give the guidance to the individuals and people so that they can protect themselves for future generations.
And just very briefly, Tekla, because we are out of time, James mentioned it there, the knowledge, do we have enough knowledge of what we're dealing with? How difficult is it, would you say, for us, ordinary people, to keep up with understanding exactly where our information is going and how it's being used?
It is very difficult, and that is why we need regulations that ensure that companies provide the transparency, so nonprofits and academics and governments can actually understand what's going on in the companies, understand where the frontier of advanced AI is, what models are capable of, what their limitations are, and then share this information and let education programs, like the one James is talking about, be informed by what is actually happening in the companies. And so citizens and societies can adapt to the technological developments that are happening and take decisions of and actively shape where the technology is going through laws, through policies, and through education.
Absolutely, as we try and keep up with very fast developing times. James and Tekla, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, before we go, we want to hear from you. Do you have a comment about our show or want to see us discuss a certain topic? Get in touch. This is also your show. And we're always open to your suggestions. Send us a message on social media, AJ Stream, and we'll check it out. For me and the entire Stream team, I'll see you soon.